Hi, I'm here with Jack Ausden from George Ausden, and he's appearing on Business Spotlight today. I'm going to take Jack through, or Jack's going to take me through some of his journey with the business. So, welcome to Business Spotlight. Can you let me know who you are, what you do in the business, and how long you've been doing it for, please?
Yeah, Jack Ausden, a family recycling fabrication business based in Watford. The family business itself has been going for 122 years through and still maintained within the family. I am a relatively new director to the company. My dad retired a couple of 3 years ago now. He's still sort of a silent partner, doesn't have any dealings with the day-to-day running of the business, but I took over from him, as it were.
Right, brilliant. And what were your qualifications coming into the business, Jack? Did you have a business background as well?
No, not really. I went to university, studied something completely different to the industry I'm working in, although what I did study did help me with a job I had prior to coming into the company full time. I was in television for a short period of time, just over 2 years. And then the rest of it really was coming into the business, and it's the sort of business you learn on the job. It's very practical, it's very hands-on. There has been some developments in my sort of understanding of the business and the qualifications I now have most recently, but when I first started, it was literally in the deep end and hands-on.
Wow, okay. So 120 years, you say?
122.
122 years. That's very impressive to keep in business that long.
Yeah. It must admit, it's quite a selling point for the business as well. People like that.
Yeah, when you consider that 90% of businesses don't last 10 years, lasting 122 is quite a considerable achievement.
Yeah.
What's the sort of big motivator for the company at the moment? Obviously, recycling is a huge part of what we now do. But how does your company do it specifically?
I mean, it's metal recycling. It's quite a primitive form of recycling, if I'm honest. There's not a great deal of sort of secondary processing from what we buy to what we then sell, because you're just dealing in a sort of a commodity, as it is really. It's, we don't do no sort of smelting, refining, or anything really happens in this country anymore due to high energy costs and stuff. So there are some secondary processes on the materials we buy from our customers, be it sort of gate trade or sort of commercial customers. And then the rest is sold to larger companies, either fairly local to us, quite fortunately, or into West London mostly.
Okay. So what makes your business stand out in your sector? What's your USP?
I mean, I do think, as we previously spoke about, I do think the nostalgia and the history of the business is quite important. We have a very sort of wide and sort of loyal customer base on both sides of the business, and they return to us time after time, week after week, job after job, because I think they know what they're going to get with us. You're not a number in a chain with us, especially on the fabrication side of the business, where we're producing structural steel work, architectural metalwork, things like that. You're just not a number in a process, and it's just out the door and away we go. It's, I'm happy to, and my colleagues as well, happy to deal with it on a very personal level, be it face to face, via email, via phone calls, visiting sites, going and seeing the people and our clients.
So how much of the business as a percentage is in the recycling, and how much is in the structural, the fabrication side?
That landscape is changing quite drastically now. I mean, historically, when the business first started, it was only ever metal recycling. And then when my dad and his brother, who still works with us, took over their shareholding from their dad, that's when they started the fabrication side of thing. Although it just started as just a cutting job, really. We would just cut structural steel for people, and then they started to grow the fabrication side of it, and then that's really where my interest lies and stuff from there. But it's that margin is now, from a profit standpoint as well as a sort of business standpoint, is narrowing all the time, to the point where you probably 50-50 now.
Right. Okay.
Whereas traditionally, when it first started, it was probably as much as 85-15.
Right. Okay. So the
So
big.
that margin's really sort of narrowing down.
Right. Okay. So what is it to take that into account, the sort of shift in the emphasis of the business and where the margins are? What does the future look like for you guys?
Um, it's not easy. I mean, it's particularly at the moment, the construction industry in general is pretty difficult. We found certainly of late this year and probably looking into next year, the commercial side of construction is propping up the residential side of construction because of the recent increases in interest rates. From a construction standpoint, certainly residentially, the task that the government set out to achieve is working because it is stalling people's expenditure. So the commercial side of it is really propping it up, and it's going to be difficult. It is going to be difficult because we are seeing customers, holding back on their money. They're not doing those builds that are, historically would have cost them maybe 30, 40 grand for an extension, and now costing them upwards of 100. They don't have that kind of flow anymore with, the mortgage that they've now got going up as well exponentially. It's going to be difficult, but we've made it a pandemic. We've made it through a lot of other things. So, we're confident that we'll make it out the other side and continue to go with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's great you've got such a solid base and obviously a fantastic reputation in the marketplace. I guess it's for you guys. It could just be about finding the right balance, and with a lot of business owners, it's about finding what market is the most attractive for them and what the opportunity is. So, with regards to, you sort of told me about the sort of macroeconomic challenges, if you like. What are the other main challenges in the business? So often that will be focused on either the amount of time that as the director has to sort of grow the business, or it could be your team encouraging the growth or recruitment of people. We see a lot of issues in the labour marketplace at the moment, but finding good people can be quite challenging. And then the other thing, of course, is about just generating cash into the business and how cash is moving through the business, because again, we're seeing pinch points across different areas where in either cash flow or winning orders or margin. So out of the three of those, is there anything that particularly grabs you as being a current challenge for George Ausden?
Certainly the latter two, for sure. I mean, the labour market, especially from our standpoint, is difficult. Good labour out there is very difficult to find. I mean, we're quite proud of the fact that the labour we do have, bar one recent employee, been with us for, I think one is 27 years, one's 33 years or something like that. So we value and respect our staffs from both an employment standpoint and their wages that we pay and the benefit that they get. We look after them. So we're quite proud of a very low turnover of staff.
Impressive.
But we have noticed within the last sort of post-pandemic that the labour market is difficult. It is a real challenge, and there are certain things we can do as a business to sort of help alleviate that. Certainly on the structural side of things, there's a lot of automated things, machinery and technology that can help us move away from actually having to employ individuals and be an employer machine.
Yeah.
Which but obviously they come with high price tags, and you're sort of you're potentially risking a lot of capital to bring one of those machines into your business with the uncertainty running alongside market at the moment that machine may not actually be working as much as it needs to be to make itself pay.
Yeah.
So it's finding a very delicate balance in between, do you make that huge financial leap into the automated industry and sort of steer away from employment, as it were, or do you try and find a mix of the both, which is also difficult as well?
Yeah, there are some distinct challenges there, and they obviously that's going to affect growth. So with regards to growth inside the business, are you managing to grow it at the moment? Are you hitting your growth goals?
I would like to say we would like to be growing more than we are, certainly this year. I would say it's stalled a little bit there from the recycling perspective as well. There was legislation brought in quite some time ago now that stopped any metal recycling process being paid out in cash. historically it was always cash payment. And that was the beauty of it. And what we saw that ran inside with that is that when you were paying cash, the volumes were there as well, and you couldn't get it out the door fast enough, as it were. But that legislation changed quite some time ago to bank transfer now, and I think we've seen that run in parallel. These volumes have dropped and do still continue to drop as well, which is providing a real challenge as well. There's only so much sort of marketing you can do to it, but if it's not there, it's not there.
Yeah.
And that proves a challenge in how that side of the business will continue to grow.
Yeah. So there's potentially, you've got the legacy business, and then you've got the opportunities to growth in the future. I mean, I'm sure you're putting plans in place. Are there any plans that you'd like to share with us about what you're planning to do to grow and develop outside of legacy business?
Yeah, I think there is not my sole focus, but one of the big focuses that struggle with labour now, and it's all the processes that we currently do. A large percentage of them are very labour intensive, and when you set that alongside a decreasing margin that you're making on the sort of finished product that you put to market, it makes it very time consuming process for a lot smaller margin. And so the automation side of it I think is going to be the direction we're going to head in, because we need to, it shouldn't be as hard as it is. We're in a challenging site because of the history and the age of the business. We haven't moved from the site that we've been on since 1925, and that is an old site, and it's not blessed with a great deal of space. It's a tricky space to work within for the sort of product that we're dealing with. So it's about trying to make our life as easy as we can now, and automation is the way to do that. I firmly believe, and and that's coupled with the fact that the labour market is so difficult to find anyone.
Yeah, no, I get that. I really understand that. It's there are some pains with having a legacy business and then trying to adapt and change to the challenging environment that we're in. So coming back to you a little bit, with regards to, you've taken on this role inside the business. It's a family business. There's legacy there. There's history there. What's your biggest lesson over the last few years since you've come into the business? What was your enlightenment, if you like? What were the challenges, and how have you come to grips with them?
I think I think people always think that working for a family business is always easy, because it's your family, and it's not. There's often, as with all business, there's often a lot of difficult conversations that need to be had about the progress of the business or the struggles that the business is currently facing. And I often feel, although I've never really experienced it, that those conversations would often be easier to have if it wasn't with members of your family.
Yes.
So often those conversations can be quite tricky to have with family, because there is family. We're quite a close family in general as well, and until currently, where most of my cousins and stuff have now all got children. When it was just us, we used to spend Christmases and stuff together a year without fail. So from a family perspective, we're very close. And when you bring that into the working environment, it's trying to find that balance in between making sure that you don't do yourself out of the conversations you need to have, but also respect the others within the business and their opinions, and the fact that ultimately you are all family as well.
Yeah, that's a very challenging and very specific dynamic, and one that I'm sure lots of family businesses will encounter. Although, having been going for 122 years, you kind of fall outside of the usual range of a family business, if you like. Lots of families would potentially, with legacy businesses, would have sold up and people moved outside of the business. Very interesting. You've come from a different sector, come back into the business and taken that challenge on. So I think it's admirable, but I'm sure it's a bit of an ordeal by fire as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it is. But we're quite fortunate as well. I think because we are close, I think that does really benefit us as well. We do find it easy to work day to day, and there are times when it's not. But by and large, we're able to sit down, have discussions, conversations. Certainly more so now. I've had to learn as an individual that I do sort of challenge where necessary, rather than maybe historically I wouldn't have done.
So Jack, what made you come back into the business? Because you're working in a very different environment beforehand.
Hmm.
And obviously it's the family business, and I can see what the attractor was. But what was the attractor for you to come back into a business which was very different from the environment that you were in before?
I think for me it was quite personal, because I was working in television. I was a cameraman for live sport.
Right.
Um, and that was another job that funny. I actually gained that job through the family business. I sort of made a point of contact there, and it was much similar to how I've learned to do my job here. It was a hands-on experience. I merely asked someone that came in one day if there was ever any work when I was sort of early starting here, albeit almost part-time. And within about 3 weeks, I was in Paris on a television camera shooting live tennis with
Wow.
no training whatsoever. And I was sort of thrown right into the deep. And I learned that on the job. And what I learned very quickly was that because it was so easy to gain that skill, you obviously there is a skill to it, and you have to hone that skill, and you can get better and better. Um, there was no real training. I had no training. I literally had a crash course on how this television camera worked and how not to mess it up. And if I did mess it up, I wasn't coming back. And that was it. And so what I found was that the pay there was quite poor. And if you really wanted to make it in that job, you had to say yes to every single piece of work that came your way. And that was great when I was just with my now wife and we had no children and we were renting a flat and stuff like that. But looking forward, it was always going to be difficult, because family was going to suffer, relationship was going to suffer. Because I mean, the longest period of time I was out of the country was 3 months without coming home, and that was when I just started. So it was only going to get sort of heavier workload in that aspect, and I was going to be going away more and more and more. And I ultimately decided that that wasn't going to be for me. I didn't, if we were lucky enough to have kids, which we have, I didn't want to be the dad that was always on the end of a Skype call or just an email, because I was always away. So I was very fortunate that the family business was here and always willing to welcome me into it.
Yeah. So I mean, you've hit a very interesting point there, because one of the things that we find with lots of business owners is the work-life balance is critical, and they haven't achieved it. And you went from an environment where you were taken away from your family months at a time, that whole family environment, the work-life balance there. You've come back into the business. How's the business treated you with the work-life balance? Have you managed to achieve that?
Yes, I have. I mean, I'm certainly guilty of almost being too invested in it at times. Again, because it's a family business, one of the things you find more about that is that you care more because you have to, because it's your bottom line. It's where your pay rise comes from. It's where your dividend may come from. So you have to care more. And I often find that I can sometimes be guilty of being too invested in it. Certainly when I'm away on holiday and things like that, I can find myself being involved when I shouldn't be. I'm perfectly allowed to have holiday. I'm perfectly entitled to have a holiday. And what I've learned over the last couple of years is that when I'm on holiday, I need to be on holiday.
Yeah.
And that's so important, because if I'm not giving my family and my children the time that they deserve when I'm not at work.
Yeah.
Because when I am at work, there are days where it goes on a little bit longer than it should do, or I have to bring the laptop home and do some stuff in the evenings and things like that. And my wife might understand that, but I need to understand from their standpoint that when I'm not at work and I've taken holiday, that time is for them.
Yeah.
And I'm learning that. I wouldn't say I've mastered it yet, but I'm learning it, and it still challenges me. But it's a learning curve.
Yeah, yeah, and it's one, as I say, that a lot of business owners and company directors really find a challenge with. I did a talk on work-life balance recently. I asked all business owners in the room if they'd achieved work-life balance, and I think around about 10% said yes. So you'll be doing really well if you'll manage to carve out that time with your family, because that's so important. So with regards to sort of moving forward, how how do you think George Ausden's going to grow into the new environment that we have? Do you have any plans you want to share?
Yeah, well, we've recently started. We've recently signed as a partner with a company that allow us to sell our structural products via an online ordering system. So historically, it was phone calls, emails, things like that. You know, people would call, they would come in and see us, they would send an email, and the tendering and quoting process goes from there. And then if you win, you meet face to face, etc., etc. But we recently partnered with a company at a fairly early stage, actually, I'm pleased to say, selling our product online. And whilst it was a slow burn for us, we didn't see a great deal of sales to start with. We invested money through them with SEO and stuff like that. And what we found is that SEO matured sort of fairly recently, and the online sales are really starting to pick up very, very nicely indeed. And it makes our life incredibly easy, because a lot of the responsibility and onus is put on the client who's doing the ordering. So there are far fewer sort of mistakes or complications. And if they are, unfortunately, they do fall to the client, because they're the ones that begin that ordering process and order from us.
Yeah.
Whereas if we're meeting in person via email, you can have miscommunications or things not translated properly. And then you have those awkward conversations where you don't want to point the finger of blame, but you also want to say, this wasn't entirely on me here. But so yeah, the online side of it is great. It's really easy to manage. The orders just come through to us. We put it through our workshop to the standards that we sell to the UKCA market on, and it's either collected or delivered, and it's seamless. And that's one thing that's really sort of boosted. I never thought I could see a world where the structural steel that we supply to the market could ever be done effectively online, until we signed and until sort of as early as this year saw that SEO mature and really start to see a big increase in sales.
Yeah, it's vital in marketplaces to become dynamic, and anything you can do, and you've done it to shorten that either the sales cycle or the customer journey. It's all about the customer journey these days, isn't it? And you guys sound like you've really come to grips with that, and that's moving the business forward, which is brilliant. So
yeah, I mean, like I say, it's so easy. If there is any confusion on one of those orders, all the information there, it's a simple phone call, and it's cleared up very, very quickly. And it just like I say, with a small workforce as well, there's only 8 of us in total. As a director, I still find myself doing some sort of the stuff that maybe a director wouldn't do, be it on machinery and things like that. But that side of things, the online side of things just makes any of those other jobs so easy. It sort of looks after itself. It's literally a case of printing a piece of paper and handing it to operatives to go and do the relevant jobs that need to be done on it. Yeah. And so, it allows you to focus on other things and give other parts of the business the attention that it deserves at the time.
Okay. So, final point, if you were to go back in time and talk to your 18-year-old self, what advice would you give them in business?
Good question. I think I would, from a work-life thing, I've realised now how important that work-life balance is. I would not let it get me as much as it did previously. Certainly in the earlier days of my kids, certainly when we had 2 as well, I was too preoccupied, and I shouldn't have been. And I think I would have loved to have had. There's no huge regret. I wasn't completely absent from the home life balance, but I think I missed a sort of trick there, and I should have been, and I wish I was a little bit more involved at that early stage. I mean, I'm fortunate they're still young enough, and I'm finding that it's getting easier now. And I think the other thing as well is, I think that especially with the family business, it's very easy when it's been going as long as we have to be left behind, and we haven't been, but there's a fine line, and I think I would have liked to have maybe moved a little bit quicker than we did.
Right. Okay.
It's not to say that opportunity has passed us altogether, but I think I would have liked to have moved a little bit quicker than we did. Probably sort of 5-6 years ago, maybe sort of pre-pandemic sort of time.
Right. Okay. Okay. So there's some great tips there, and thank you very much for that. Jack, thanks so much for your time. I've picked up
Thank you.
some pointers here. I'm sure our audience will as well. I wish you continued success with your business with George Ausden.
Thank you very much.
And I'm sure you'll keep driving the company forward. So thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.